I believe this might be the most important video we've ever shared on this channel for a couple of key reasons. First, the information we're discussing today is not easy to hear. And while many stories we cover often feel that way, this one is especially serious and concerning. It also challenges some of the early assumptions that people had about the individual accused in the Charlie Kirk case. Now, that doesn't change the reality of what has followed. A coordinated effort by Donald Trump, his allies, and right-wing media to politicize this tragedy, escalate division, and target marginalized communities. That remains the truth and must be addressed. But newly surfaced messages connected to the alleged shooter raise even greater concerns, particularly regarding how Trump and his movement may attempt to use them going forward. I'll break down what this means, the risks it poses, and why it's so important to look at this situation with clarity and nuance. But first, let's start with what Lawrence O'Donnell had to say about it on his program last night, because that context is critical.
Donald Trump insults the intelligence of the entire country, including his own supporters, when he launches this mass libel of half the country. The 20-year-old man in Pennsylvania who shot at Donald Trump was a registered Republican. And the 22-year-old Utah man accused of murdering Charlie Kirk has never voted. The single most murderous American political assassin was a registered Republican. And he is the only American political assassin who murdered more than one person. Timothy McVeigh was a veteran of the United States Army who, at 26 years old, in an instant, murdered 168 people in the federal building in Oklahoma City.
Overwhelmingly, we have seen an overwhelming majority of these instances of political violence, of gun violence, be carried out because of right-wing extremism that furs online, that is unchecked by algorithms, that is encouraged and laughed at by those in the conservative movement. And that is important to point out, not because I want a political win, not because it serves how I see and view the world and how I'm sure you do as well, but because we have to come to that understanding before we can fix the crisis of political violence, before we can fix the crisis of gun violence, a policy failure and a policy choice, which the right seems content with. Even in the wake of Charlie Kirk's shooting, they seem fine with it. Because what they want to exploit is a story that they are twisting, that they are lying about, and that they ultimately just want to use to serve their authoritarian project. Now, the story they have been telling is one of an uprising of a marginalized community that is inflicting pain on the rest of the 99% of Americans. This is an untrue story. The image that Republicans are painting of trans Americans is fundamentally wrong. It is revolting, and it is in an effort to increase political violence against a group that is maybe more persecuted than any other in this current moment by this administration. That is scary. And they are doing so with words, images, initial reporting that they have completely misconstrued. But we are getting new reporting on the messages sent and the messages shared by Charlie Kirk's alleged shooter, not just from his friends, but from the police, that I think is incredibly important in telling this story. Now, we have a lot to get through, and I hope you stick around through all of it, because this is I hate to use this word, but ammo we need figuratively to fight back against this narrative being presented. It is important that we know what was and wasn't said in this motive. So I really hope you listen to all of this. I have a lot to say afterwards, but let's get into it. Independent journalist Ken Klippenstein wrote on his Substack exclusive leaked messages from Charlie Kirk, alleged assassin. Hey guys, I have bad news for you. It was me at UVU yesterday. Thus, Tyler Robinson messaged his friends on Discord seemingly apologizing for murdering Charlie Kirk. I'm sorry for all of this. I obtained this in other Discord chats. I've decided to publish the legacy news media as usually refuses, along with new information I've learned about Robinson from people who knew him best. Trump and company portray the alleged Utah shooter as left-wing, and liberals portray him as right-wing. The federal conclusion will inevitably be that he was a so-called nihilist, violent extremist. Meanwhile, the crackdown has already begun. As I reported yesterday, this country is practically ready to go to war. It's been so terrible, and seeing it from an inside perspective is so frustrating. A friend of Robinson since middle school told me the childhood friend who asked not to be named for fear of threats provided me with the above non-public photo of Robinson on camping trip. A favorite activity of his to corroborate their friendship. I think the main thing that caused so much confusion is that he was always generally apolitical for the most part. The friend told me, that's the big thing. He just never really talked about politics, which is why it's so frustrating. The picture that emerges bears little resemblance to the media version. Robinson, I am told, though quiet, was a well-liked person with a supportive family. The friend group who he interacted with on Discord, far from the kind of militia camp or Antifa bunker it's been portrayed as, represented a range of different political views, but mostly talked about video games. Yesterday, FBI Director Kash Patel said in an interview that Robinson subscribed to left-wing ideology, citing his family's remarks to investigators. But those close to Robinson say there was a lot of family that didn't know about him. Their ideas are based on someone they didn't fully understand. The childhood friend told me, though, the family was generally supportive of Robinson, a claim corroborated by his mother's Facebook account brimming with praise for Tyler. They didn't seem to know about his relationship with a transgender person named Lance. The friend said, when I asked if his family would be accepting, the friend replied, I don't think even Tyler knew the answer to that question, which is why he kept it so low. Key between themselves. Tyler's bisexuality, the friend said, was coupled with openness on LGBT issues. But his wasn't some cookie-cutter lefty position on every or even most issues, his friends say. Obviously, he's okay with gay and trans people having a right to exist, but also believes in the Second Amendment, the friend said, referring to the right to bear arms. The friend described Robinson as fairly typical of a young man his age from Utah. Someone who loved the outdoors, was a gamer, and into guns. To all of us, he seemed like a simple guy. He liked playing video games like Sea of Thieves, Deep Rock Galactic, and Helldivers 2, loved to fish, and loved to camp. The friend said, it really did seem like that's all he was about. Now, these are the texts between Tyler and his roommate recently released by law enforcement. After reading the note, the roommate responded, "What? You're joking, right?" Robinson said, "I am still okay, my love, but I'm stuck in Orem for a little while longer yet. Shouldn't be long until I can come home, but I gotta grab my rifle. To be honest, I had hoped to keep this secret till I died of old age. I am so sorry to involve you." The roommate responded, "You weren't the one who did it, right?" Robinson said, "I am. I'm sorry." In recently released text messages from law enforcement, we learned more about the alleged shooter's motives, which they said may have been influenced by rhetoric from Charlie Kirk. Now, while this does not make every detail perfectly clear, what is most troubling is how this situation has been twisted against someone who was not involved in any way. the alleged shooter's roommate. Law enforcement has stated that this individual, who is reported to be a trans person, had no knowledge of any plan, showed fear and distress when the events unfolded, and has fully cooperated with authorities. Despite this, figures like Donald Trump, Kash Patel, and others on the right have chosen to target and demonize them, which is deeply disturbing. It is heartbreaking and frightening to see how quickly an already vulnerable community is being blamed and attacked for actions they had nothing to do with. From what we know, this person's only role was to assist law enforcement. Yet the narrative being pushed paints them, and by extension, the wider trans community, as guilty by association. That reality should alarm all of us. It raises fears that this tragedy will be used as a pretext to justify further targeting of organizations and communities that exist to support, protect, and affirm people who are often marginalized and under threat. If the reporting we have is accurate, the only action taken by this trans American was to cooperate and help investigators. And yet, a campaign of blame is still being directed toward them and toward the community they belong to. This is not about celebrating who the alleged shooter was or wasn't politically aligned with. Political violence in any form is unacceptable. What worries me most is that instead of addressing the real causes of this tragedy, such as access to weapons and the environment that fuels isolation and extremism, the administration and its allies appear determined to use this moment to vilify an already targeted group. That is what scares me. And that is why I will continue covering this story carefully, doing my best to keep you updated and informed. It is not easy to talk about, but it is important. Thank you for being here, for listening, and for supporting this channel as we work to tell these stories responsibly. And if you stuck around at the end, you can drop the blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I will see you soon.